Joining me now for this bonus episode of Locked On Gators is John Garcia, Sports Illustrated's Director of Football Recruiting and Locked On's Recruiting Insider. And before we get into it, I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. And John, we're expecting a pretty big day for the Florida, or a pretty big weekend for the Florida Gators right now. And first up is today's commitment with Kelby Collins. It's a Saturday episode, yay! So Kelby Collins is committing, is deciding between a few schools. What's the latest on his recruitment?
Yeah, this has really become a 2 to 3 horse race. I think publicly it's more Florida, Alabama at the end, but South Carolina's been in this conversation for a long time too. So I think there's still a dark horse to at least consider. But like most, I feel this comes down to the Crimson Tide versus the Florida Gators, and it's quite interesting because of course Kelby's from Gardendale, Alabama, which is a suburb of Birmingham, which is less than an hour from Tuscaloosa. So you certainly would understand if this went chalk and he picked Alabama because he's a big D lineman and Nick needs those always. And that's it. But that's not the case here. Florida has really made this a tight race. I've been told 50-50. I've been told it's that touch and go. I've gotten phone calls this week about both programs being on top, but the most recent was about Florida. I actually think he's a bit of a go against the grain kind of kid. And I was told by one source that he actually likes Florida and South Carolina personally more so than Alabama in terms of the culture, the atmosphere, the locations, just kind of the variance that you get compared to Tuscaloosa. So I do believe that if it were up to Kelby specifically, I think Florida is probably the school that he's going to pick. Now, his father's a big Alabama fan. And obviously, again, we talked about the proximity to Tuscaloosa. And you never count out Nick. I mean, I think that would be foolish and a little naive at this point. But in terms of the commitment over the weekend, you got to feel good about Florida's chances. You know, we were up there for Friday Night Lights. We saw the red carpet treatment that Kelby was receiving. There was not a moment where we saw him without somebody from UF, whether it was Billy, whether it was the assistant coaches, staffers, hostesses, whoever. There was always somebody, former players, recruits. There was always somebody with Kelby Collins. So I think the need combined with that most recent visit really could propel Florida over the top here. And it would be a very big deal because, when a kid has a green light from Alabama in that state and he doesn't go there, it's almost national news no matter where he goes. So I think this would be a really nice optical win for the Florida Gators. And again, it's a big need. It's a bigger need for Florida than Alabama at this moment. So beyond the optics, a really big, important positional get from this interior defensive lineman with a ton of varsity experience. I'm a big fan of Kelby's game. He carries 275 about as well as any human being you could imagine. And that's scary because he's just, 17, 18 years old at this point. So I think it could really be a banner commitment for the Gators.
Do you think the Florida Gators will win 7 or more games this year? Do you think they'll win less than that? Because right now the odds have changed. BetOnline, the Gators win total is set at 7 wins. I've said it before personally. I think they're going to win 8 or 9. So I'm still taking the over. That has changed nothing. But now if you think they're going to win 7 games, bet the over. Or if you think they're going to win less than 7, bet the under. And you get a push if they win exactly 7. So ties suck, but at least you get your money back. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. Been using it for years now. It's no secret. I openly say this. I love BetOnline. They're fantastic. It's got so much, not just football, baseball, basketball, soccer, hockey, tennis, boxing, MMA. And I say MMA because it's more than just UFC. So MMA, darts, esports like League of Legends, Counter Strike Go, Global Operation, I think it stands for. You've got economics, politics, if aliens are going to invade. You can bet on everything on this site. I'm serious. Check it out. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn all about the trends and action. Check out Bet Online. It's where the game starts. Yeah, and I think it was Tuesday, he tweeted out a picture of him with Georgia gear on, and when I looked at the responses, it was just everybody going, "Dude, we know you're not going to Georgia." That's all it was. Everybody going "We know you're not going there," which is the expectation. How does Kelby Collins kind of stack up against the other similar defensive linemen in this class?
He's a great player. He was very much in consideration for the SI 99. Didn't quite make the cut. But look, this is 6'4", 6'5", 275 pounds of modern inside out defensive tackling. And I think that is something that every program needs. He can absolutely win at the point of contact, which is critical for any defensive lineman. But he's got this quickness that comes along with the natural strength that I think makes him a true 3-down player. You can absolutely see him collapsing the pocket on a quarterback just as much as you could see him raking in a tackle for loss. Earlier in his career, he was more of an outside guy. So he does still have some of that pass rushing prowess from when he was a little bit smaller and playing on the edge. Again, this is a 3 or 4 year varsity starter at pretty high levels of high school ball in the state of Alabama. So he's gone against great competition. He's lined up all over the defensive line. I think those are invaluable characteristics that he brings to the table before his senior season even begins. And I think he's still got a long way to go. Like I said, he was an outside guy who's now moving inside. So he's still got room to work from a technical standpoint as an interior guy. And I think that's where he's going to play, obviously, on Saturdays in the SEC. And I think that's where, even if he gains some weight, he's going to live going forward. So the more experience and reps he gets working exclusively inside, the better he's going to be. So the best ball still well ahead for Kelby Collins. But again, a physical specimen and a guy who could probably carry more weight if you needed him to, but he could also probably stay in that 280 range if you leave it up to him. So I think that's a good position to be in. When we talk about defensive linemen nowadays, you're not talking about 350-pound guys anymore. Even on the interior, these are smaller, swifter players that are making an impact on all 3 downs. And Kelby Collins fits a lot of those modern traits to a T.
Yeah, and from a Florida staff standpoint, Kelby Collins, like you mentioned, someone who played outside, moving inside. How enticing is that from a coaching staff standpoint? Where I mean, we've seen Javon Dexter is moving to defensive end, which is still just D tackle, just a little out wide.
Yeah.
But he's moving to defensive end. So how enticing is it to have a guy who has experience on the end and is now willing to make that shift to the interior?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, look, all these guys want to be long, lean pass rushers. It's the flashier spot, right? It's like the tight end that occasionally gets to split out at receiver. He wants to play receiver as much as humanly possible. Same kind of thing in this case, but the experience in doing both is really invaluable because, yeah, as you mentioned, in Florida's scheme and in most schemes, you're going to have to do both depending on down distance and personnel. So already having that experience is really invaluable. And again, there's a big need for that in this Florida roster, this rebuild, the turnover from one coaching staff to the other. So I think that's part of the reason why Florida's been at the forefront of his recruitment really since his first trip down to Gainesville. They have sold him on, hey, we really need guys like you down here. And he's really bought into that from the jump. And yeah, I think Dexter physically is an interesting guy to bring up in this regard because while he was more of a basketball guy transitioning into football positionally, he did some of those same things. He thought he was going to be an outside guy early in his high school career when he got on the field. And me and everyone else told him, hey, look, man, you're going to have to play inside, but buy into it because if you do buy into it, it could mean some pretty great things for you down the line. So he's obviously done that at this point. So I think height weight wise, there's some similarities between those two at the same stage of their high school career. So obviously, anytime you're in that part of the conversation, it's a big deal for Florida. And again, optics are big here and great, but throw that aside. Florida needs these inside out trench prospects in a big way. So this would be a heck of an addition to the class.
Yeah, and I mean, Kelby Collins committing today. He put 2 to 4 p.m., so Lord knows when that's going to happen, but it's in that range, we'll say. But thank you so much, John, for coming on again, and you're going to be here tomorrow to talk about Cameron James. Catch John on Twitter at John Garcia_JR. He's Sports Illustrated's Director of Football Recruiting and Locked On's Recruiting Insider.
Thank you, sir.